Hi, and thanks everyone. MSP Ignition episode number 13, Right Now Contracts. Today we're joined with Scott Kaplan from K1, and this is Tom Watson speaking. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover now in our sales enablement track some very important information that's going to help you in your sales process. Next. First of all, before we get started, you need to thank the company I work for, Axcient, eFolder, and mention some of our products briefly. First of all, we have Anchor, File Sync, and Share. One way to think about this is Dropbox for business. It has all the features and security, much more so than consumer-grade products. And for MSPs, this is a fantastic tool to roll out in your managed service agreements and find a way to utilize for your clients, giving them secure file sync and share, file server enablement, file server replacement, and finally make a little money on that piece of your business. You probably aren't right now with them using consumer-grade solutions. Then we have Cloud Finder. Really interested in this product right now because this allows you to make money off Office 365, which you probably aren't right now. This is a cloud-to-cloud backup solution, backs up Office 365, mail, contacts, and calendar, and also can get SharePoint instances as well. It provides archiving features, search features, and unlimited storage of all emails and messages and contacts and calendar items. Then we have our original product, Backup for File. This is a basic backup product that still works very well. If you just need to back up a server and put that data somewhere else, this is a wonderful tool. Also, we have Replibit and BRC. These two products are coming together. Last year, we acquired Axcient, and with that got the BRC product. That, along with Replibit, gives us two disaster recovery as a service solutions. Replibit is great for smaller networks and when you really want to save some costs off of services like Datto. We come in with a lower price solution where you can use your own hardware or ours. You can use your own private cloud or our private cloud. Then we have BRC, and this is a wonderful solution for your top managed service agreement clients. It provides one snapshot, multiple cover options. As you can see, this uses our hardware that we provide partnered with HP, and it backs it up fully to our cloud, allowing full restore features in our cloud or on the device on-prem, including physical server failover, system restore, bare metal restore, as you can see, granular application recovery, including Exchange mailboxes, virtual server failover. Next slide. So what we're going to do today is primarily with Scott Kaplan, who is an excellent trainer in sales enablement, and he's going to take us through ability to grow your business, develop your team's focus and skills on sales skills. And as I said there, challenge your team to think differently. What we're trying to do here is we understand that MSPs out there often are stuck in the sales process. It's one of the hard, sales and marketing are the hardest things to kind of break through and gain more business. And we're going to try to provide you tools, as we have in the Sales Enablement Program, that you can use in your business on a day-to-day business to grow. Next. So now I'm going to pass it over to Scott.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. And as you can see today from the slides up there, we're talking about what we call right now contracts. That's just a phrase that we kind of have put together and we've kind of used. But what it's really trying to help you with is making sure that you can engage in the proper ways with every customer interaction that you want to go out there and have, right? And make sure that you're not aligned, that you don't have any misalignment on activities or objectives that you're trying to do, projects that you're working on, and really tries to avoid any types of, communication faux pas, if you will, that might be going on and that you might be going out there and seeing. And so in our traditional fashion, what we want to do is start off with a poll. And so we're going to bring up that poll right now. All right. So our first polling question that we wanted to, ask for all of you is, when do you really ensure that you and your prospect or customer, depending on where you are always aligned? Do you really focus on the first call? Or is it just basic discussions and you don't need to worry about alignment until they become a customer? Is it more unique or special types of projects that you're working on? or maybe there's just been a unique circumstance here where we just need to be a little bit more diligent or anything along those ways. So I'll ask you guys to kind of go out there and do a vote, and I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to do that. And Sam, you want to kind of tell us what people are tending to answer?
Yeah, we're about even right now between on our first call and not until they become a customer, with not until they become a customer kind of edging a little bit. And we have 40% saying all of the above. Okay.
All right, good. So kind of hitting across those different pieces of it. That's great. So Tom and I probably had a little bit of a bet in terms of what we thought the number one would be. We kind of both were going between the on our first caller until they become a customer. And so what we'll do is we'll really talk about how do we leverage these right now contracts in multiple of different ways. And so you can see the different types of examples. We'll walk through a bunch, and we'll give you guys the opportunity to chime in. If you want to give us any questions, feel free to type them into the chat window, and Sam can make sure that we get to those. But like I said, we'll go through and how we could hit some of these nuances and leverage these right now contracts, and really trying to focus in on what we like to think of as kind of the key secret being ensuring that all of your communications really drive the actions forward in a way that gives complete and utter honesty and clarity. I've trained, as Tom said, I have a pretty extensive sales enablement and sales training background. And I've worked with, I can't even tell you, probably over 14,000 people that I've trained in the sales world, sales reps and sales managers. And what I have found, when you get to the level of being really completely open and honest with your prospects and customers, but know how to drive that in a very cohesive manner, the amount of conversations and the business partnerships that you develop are, to some extent, lifelong partnerships. And you can continue to leverage those relationships and leverage those interactions because you guys have that clarity and open honesty. And I want to make sure that you can see one of the biggest, ways that I've always driven that is what we call right now contracts. So as we kind of go forward, I want to start by defining really what is a right now contract, right? And making sure that we are all on the same page of what it is, right? And so what it really is, it's a way to gain agreement with you and a prospect or a customer, to some extent, as much as you can in advance of that meeting as possible, and really kind of go through different things like an agenda, the logistics, any expectations, but really also getting to what is that desired outcome that we want to go out there and try to achieve, right? And a strong right now contract is a must on every touch point, communication, interaction. You want to make sure that you can go out there and leverage it. So again, we'll walk through a few different examples of when you might go out there and use it and how you might go out there and try to drive those. So when you think about the right now contracts, right, here's some of the things that I've heard over the years, and then I worked with Tom to get even more specifics for what you might be dealing with or how you might be dealing with it from an MSP dynamic. So a lot of times when I talk with people, how do I go out there and try to do these right now contracts on things like cold calls or even a new contact call? If you're dealing with someone and there's maybe a new person to be speaking with or whatever the case may be, how do you leverage it in the first couple of seconds when you're trying to build rapport, when you're trying to build a relationship and you don't necessarily have it? And that's what I mean kind of by that first bullet. And then obviously when you set up future meetings, when you start meetings, even to keep control of the meetings, and then when you end a meeting, how do you validate that right now contract was met and then set up a next right now contract kind of for going forward? So what we'll do is I'll break each one of these down again, and then we have some more specifics to hit, other scenarios to hit. So the first one is that kind of cold call, new contact type of person, right? So, hi Tom, hi Kelly, hi Sam, whatever the name you want to enter. So hi Tom, this is Scott Kaplan from Axcient. I don't know if you're the right person or not. Is it okay if I just take 60 seconds every time and you could tell me if I'm in the right spot, right? So for those who have heard from me before and anything else, I do that same stupid laugh in the same stupid spot every time, right? It's just my style of how I like to get this out. Some people like to say 60 seconds. Some people like to say 30 seconds. Some people know that they might need 90 or even 120 seconds. So they take out the seconds and they say a moment. But the key here is on an initial contact. And if it's a cold call, you're walking into some situation. So I've done this at trade shows. I've done this cold walking into environments. I've done this on cold calls. I've done this with new contacts, and I've seen it really work well. Just really kind of backing, things up and just making sure we could have that type of initial follow through. So again, take the style that works for you. But the key here is, I don't know if you're the right person I should be speaking with or not. Is it okay if I take a moment, tell you why I'm calling, you can tell me if I'm in the right spot? And if you think about what someone's job is supposed to do, if anyone was ever contact you and you heard them say it, you don't know necessarily what it's about. And your job is to be helpful. So it allows you to have that minute, if you will, to then go into, like you see here, an elevator pitch, right? And set up what a new right now contract would be. And when I do this on cold calls, I'm very respectful of people's time. And I try to be very cognizant of the 60 seconds that I've asked for. And so when I go through the elevator pitch, depending upon, what I was selling at the time or what I was trying to communicate at the time, I go through, here's what I'm trying to do, and I go through my elevator pitch. But then I just tie my kind of transition from elevator pitches. I only ask for 60 seconds of your time. Typically people tell me at this point in time, if we can go forward, if I can have 2 to 3 minutes to really uncover your needs, tell you a little bit more, have a little dialogue, and they can see after that 2, 3, 5 minutes if it's the right thing to go forward. Is it something we can do now, or is it something we should maybe schedule for tomorrow or the day after? Right? And that's kind of how I would tend to finish my elevator pitch. So they understood the value that I did based off the problems that I tend to hear in their industries and what they're dealing with, and see if they want to continue the conversation. But like I said, it's very upfront, it's very honest in terms of what I want to go out there and do. And then I make sure I'm talking with the right person. If they're not the right person, I don't want to waste their time or anything else along that perspective. So I found this to be just a really good first type of contact with a person here and there. Tom, I know you've heard me say this phrase probably, and I don't know how many times now you've probably heard me say something along those lines. Any thoughts that you have just from an MSP perspective?
My big thing is, and we kind of went over it here, was that if you ask for an amount of time, try to stay within the constraints of that amount of time. I think it's a great way to start out talking to someone where they understand that each time you ask for something, you're then adhering and getting exactly that and no more and no less. So if you say, I need 5 minutes of your time, cap it at 5 minutes. Don't go 15 minutes. Be respectful of other people's time. And also understand that you're building a rapport with them by every time you ask for something, you're only getting exactly what you asked for, and you're staying aligned.
Yeah, great, thank you. So that's what we talked about from initial. Again, this is meant when you only have the first couple of seconds and the 10 seconds, and you kind of go from there. More often than not, though, as you're starting to think about, what you would do next, is really trying to set up that meeting. Right. So when you do go out there and you talk to people, this tends to be how a meeting gets set. And this is probably should feel very normal and comfortable and consistent with what people have. So how you've been using quote unquote right now contracts already. But so Tom, when we meet next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we can really review your goals, your current environments, and then really how Axiom has helped MSPs. Right. At the end of that, we can determine if you think there's a fit or not and if we should move forward. Is there anything else you want to accomplish, or is there anyone else you think that should be joining that based off of what we'll be talking about? So maybe you ask a couple of different clarifications, get their involvement, get their agreement, right? This is meant to be a contract, which is we both agree to it. We both are trying to move forward. It's okay, great. I think now it works. So I'll send you a calendar invite in the next few minutes. If it's something that you need to add logistical things like a go-to meeting like we do for this session, you add that. If there's other logistics of addresses of where you're going to meet, you can add that. But this is where you get the desired, here's what we're going to do from an agenda perspective. Here's who's going to be involved. But also, what do we want to go out there and accomplish with this? And so you can see at the end of the end of that time, we can determine if there's a fit to go out there and move forward or not. Real clear, real honest, and kind of start it out from there. So that's how you really go out there and set a meeting. And I think it's really important to do that, to make sure there is absolute clarity, and make sure everyone's prepared, and making sure that things can start to go forward. And the beautiful part about that too is then how do you leverage that and go into that next meeting when you actually start that meeting, right? So we want to go out there and really kind of start the meeting. How do you take the setting up of the meeting and really drive it forward? Slide, please. So when you start that meeting, it's kind of how it sounds like, right? So Tom, we spoke last, we said review your goals, your current environment, and how Axiom can help. So we'd spend an hour and determine if there's a fit, and we can make sure we can determine if we can move forward. And you still ask, is there anything else you want to go out there and accomplish? But as you guys are seeing, there's a couple other things that are popping up now in terms of that blue font and everything else. And this is where a right now contract really helps solidify what the outcome needs to be and how you're going to get there. So, okay, Tom, anything else you want to accomplish? Okay, no, we're still on the same page. Great. So, Tom, at the end of this meeting, if you don't think we're a fit, are you going to be comfortable telling me no? Tom,
Absolutely, Scott.
Okay, yeah. It's fine, Tom. I can take no for an answer. I'm a big boy. That's fine. Great. I'm glad it's going to be comfortable telling me no. On the flip side of that, though, Tom, if you think that there is a fit, are you going to be comfortable telling me kind of yes and really what's involved and how we can really move forward so I can make sure we're aligned?
Absolutely, Scott. I mean, I think that we are developing, the relationship we need to, and I can be honest with you.
Cool, perfect. I appreciate that, and I'll be honest with you as well. So what I'll do is I'll say 5 minutes at the end of our time, and we can see where we stand. And then thanks, Tom, for going into that. And Tom, I know I threw you a little bit off into that role play, and I think I did that a little bit intentionally, everyone, because a lot of times when you do start to add in these questions, especially if you don't think you're a right fit, are you going to be comfortable telling me no? More often than not, there'll be some delays. And I leverage that as part of my open and honesty with that, same kind of chuckle. It's okay. I'm a big boy. I can take no for an answer, right? And if it's not something that you want to do or not right now, let's just have that open honesty. And it really gets it out there on the table from the beginning. And this right now contract, when you start a meeting, right, to go forth and how you can go out there and leverage it, is really meant to make sure that you can get that no or the yes. But if it is a yes too, I want to make sure I know exactly what that means and how we can move forward and what the details would be. And then from there, I make sure it's real crystal clear that I'll save the last 5 minutes of this hour to make sure that we're aligned. So there'll be no doubt at the end of this conversation that I go back to my right now contract. I say, Tom, we started at the beginning. We talked about how we were going to view what we do for MSPs, how we can go there and help them, but really tie that to what your needs were and everything else. And I know how I see about it, but do you think we're the right fit? Now, I asked you if you'd be comfortable telling me no. Where do we stand? You don't necessarily have to answer it right now, Tom. I was put myself on mute because I had a quick cough. That was more the delay. But where do we stand? Okay, great. So if they say, I think there is a good fit, great. Then we talk about what would that mean? So how does it move forward? What does it you want to go out there and try to get to? And it allows you to progress the conversation forward. And it actually helps you set up the next right now contract. Okay, so here's what you want to do, how you want to go out there and do it, if there's any parameters that you need to go out there and do, and it gets everything clearly understood on all aspects, what you need to do, what that prospect needs to do or wants to do, and where you both want to mutually take it. So Tom, again, I know that you and I have been talking, for years or months, if not years now, on some different sales aptitude and different things. I know this is one that really kind of resonated with you when you first heard me talk about it, X amount of weeks, months, years ago. you want to give your kind of your 2 cents of what you think about the kind of how you start a meeting with the asking for the no and driving towards a yes?
Yes, Scott. The big thing that got me on this is kind of it's kind of an IT word too. It's an interrupt almost. And what's great about it is you kind of snap the person to attention right there. They're not going to see this coming. You're really giving them a direct question. You're making them make a decision right now. And I like it because it frames the rest of the conversation. You're asking them to make a decision right now, and they say yes. Then you're going to ask another question and ask them to make another decision. And you're moving towards them. You're moving towards that eventual yes, can we do business together? And it's a great way to start because from right from the outset, they understand that we are now negotiating in some way. And you're going to need to be completely open and honest with me, and I'm going to be it with you, and that's how we're going to possibly come to a deal. But I just think it pulls people in right from the beginning, just with that question of, are you comfortable telling me no? I mean, no one really sees that coming, but it's an important question, and it has a lot of validity in a business conversation. And I would encourage anyone out there to ask that. The other person on the other side is going to appreciate it, actually, because they're going to be like, wow, this person's serious about doing business and wants to know how I feel about it.
Yeah. So I know you use the word negotiating, and I agree with that. I also would probably emphasize the word partnering, right? And making sure that we are aligned to what we need to go out there and do. And negotiation, and the reason I just kind of say it is, tends to have a negative context of there has to be a winner or a loser. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't have to be that way. And when you really partner and negotiate what you need and what I need, that's really what a true good partnership is. And think about all the relationships that we've had, from personal to professional relationships, and how you negotiate what you need or how you need it. That's good partnership, and how you can go out there and really try to drive it. So actually, I like the word and I embrace the word negotiating. I just, in case anyone had a negative context around it, I just wanted to maybe reframe other ways of thinking about that word and kind of going forth from there. Cool. So another example that we also talked about was keeping control during a meeting. And we've all been there when meetings are going off a little bit and they don't necessarily follow the right path. And what I've also seen people do, and a lot of salespeople do, is someone asks a question that might be on a product they've been talking about, but it might be on a different product. And what they do is they derail that meeting objective for something that might or might not be that important to their customer. And then they can't necessarily get back on track to complete what they had actually gone out there and tried to achieve. And the idea of just keeping control is, again, just making sure if you need to deviate from that meeting, how do you go out there and do that? So Tom, when we started, we agreed that we'd review your goals and kind of your environment, then review how Axcient would help MSPs. We're going off on a little bit of a different path right now, and that's totally okay. I just want to make sure we accomplish our goal. Do you want to table that topic for right now and see if we have time at the end? Or is it really something that's that important to you that we really should maybe think about extending our meeting an additional 15 minutes and really discuss it now? You don't have to answer that one, Tom. But you guys can see the way that you're able to use this type of script and tactic to make sure that you can keep control. And if you do have salespeople, on your team, or if you are the salesperson, be cognizant you might fall into the trap. Oh, I hear something, it's a need. Let me go right down into it. I'm not saying you shouldn't address it. I'm just saying make sure if you're going off of your right now contract, that you reset your right now contract and get it to be crystal clear of what you want to go out there and do. And if they give you an additional 15 minutes, what you could probably also assume is that you could, if needed, take an additional 15 minutes, just because default calendars takes 30 minutes of time. So if you were to go click on your calendar and start a new calendar event, it's normally a 30-minute event. So if they're willing to give you that 15 minutes, that means they might have some additional time. And so it gives you good validity to understand what you're addressing with. If they bring something else up, they might say it's even more important than the initial objective. And again, just do a new reframing of a right now contract and go out there and address those different specifics to make sure there's complete alignment of what you want to do and how you want to go out there and try to drive it. And then the last example that we brought up before too was kind of finishing up a meeting. and you guys kind of heard how we kind of go out there and do that. So Tom, when we started this meeting, we said we'd go back in the last 5 minutes and really discuss if we were a fit or not. To recap, and you recap the problems that you found and then tie it to those solutions that you had and ask, are we a good fit? And if they say no, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. I thought we were. Do you mind telling me where I missed the mark? And you can kind of have a little bit of a dialogue from there. And it might not be you missing the mark. And I use this kind of phrase as to really make it about me and not about them. And so they don't necessarily feel like I'm attacking them. And I don't necessarily say, well, why do you think that? Because a why question, by some extent, is an attacking question. All right. So, but do you mind telling me where I missed the mark and where I thought we weren't aligned? And if you don't think you're aligned with them then too, then you go out there and say, I agree. I don't think we are necessarily aligned. Here's maybe some things where I think where we could get more alignment if things change in your business, right? And then you can still have that dialogue as well. So you can take the no's a few different ways. But if it's a yes, then great. I completely agree. So it's great. So how do you envision, us going forward? And you'd be surprised when you ask that type of question, especially if you're really familiar with how to leverage right now contracts, they actually can start to outline the next right now contract for you, right? And so I was working with Tom and we were talking about this, and I said, listen, really, when you have an initial meeting, what might be a next step for an MSP? All right, what would be the next thing they'd really want to go out there and do? If they had a great, first introductory call with someone or met someone along the way, what would it lead to? And so, great, I completely agree, Tom. I think we are a good fit. What I'd like to be able to go out there and do is set up an hour and really come to your office so we can really review your specific kind of technical inventory and the needs that you have, look at any gaps and then opportunities so we can outline really what a great go-forward plan would be. And at the same time, we can outline any pricing and structures that you want to go out there and do that work for both of us and kind of figure out a way to sign that contract so we can get this implemented. And if you really want to go out there and really drive towards clear meetings, what their objectives are going to go out there and be, that's a great way to set up that right now contract, that last line of how you can go out there, what you're going to go out there and do, discuss the needs, gaps, opportunities, figure out a pricing plan, and that might be a structure plan, a go forward plan, however you want to design that, right? That works for both of us. And making sure that they understand this is a mutual partnership, but ultimately sign a contract to go forward. And if you're not at that point to get a signed contract, maybe there's other things that you want to ascertain first to make sure it's good business for you. Just ask yourself this question. If everything went perfectly on this call, how would it end? What would I kind of sell them, if you will? How would it finish? If everything went perfectly. Right? And then make sure that that's part of your right now contract. And if you were to look at the examples that we've given thus far, that's how we framed if everything went perfectly, what would I sell? What would I get? What would I be able to do and move forward? Right? So on a cold call, I know I only have, 10, 15 seconds to get them to be engaged. So that initial, it's okay if I take 60 seconds to tell you why I'm calling, you can tell me if I'm in the right spot, is just a 10-second spiel to get me 1 minute. Because then if I have a good solid elevator pitch that then ties back to how we can move forward, then I'll try to go from there and take my 1 minute into the next meeting and so on. But if everything went perfectly, what would I get and how would I get those to move forward? And that's how we tend to drive those particular pieces. So those are some scenarios that I think are kind of general, that you could use the right now contracts throughout. Tom and I put our heads together and said, what are some other scenarios where a right now contract is needed? And so you can use right now contracts on any one of these different types of environments. So the roughly 35, 40% of you that said all of the above beforehand in our first polling question, right? You can really see that right now contracts are that true necessity. So think about a problem that maybe you've had with a current customer and how you want to go out there and address it, right? So, hey, I want to go out there and talk about our the problem that we had, maybe, review the issues that I've had on my side, because maybe you made an error, review the error that I made, how I'm going to go out there and correct that and make sure that it does not happen again, and ensure we're on the same path for a go forward plan, and that you have the comfort that you need to have with me. If that's the case, great. If there's gaps with them, how would you bring up a right now contract with them, right? And talk about some of those pieces of, hey, here's some things that we've had in the past and I want to make sure we can go out there and address. And so making sure that if you're dealing with a difficult customer, how would you bring that up? How would you have a right now contract? Hey, there's been some gaps in terms of how we work forward, and some of the responses that my team is doing, I don't feel have been working well for you or for them. And I just want to make sure we can get on the same page. And how do we deal with these types of situations going forward? Now you're setting up the stage. The outcome is, I want to know how we deal with these situations beforehand and what we need to have. All right, so there's all these different types of specifics. And Tom actually said, hey, can you actually address some of these? And so what we're going to do is we'll show you guys a few of these. So we'll hit the lack of specifics as well as the reining people back in. But these can be things that you guys work at any point in time. And especially in that middle, if you feel you're misaligned with any expectations, how you want to go out there and drive that and go forth from there is great. That's fine, Sam, if you want to go forward. So we have lack of specifics, right? So how would you go out there and bring a right now contract up for kind of a lack of specifics, right? So you can kind of get a sense. So Tom, I've dealt with some customers in the past where we weren't 100% aligned on who was doing what. So I wanted to make sure we are clear on what we're both doing, what we both need, and really what to expect to ensure that we hold each other accountable and keep things on track. And then I love this next question. So Tom, why don't you start? Why don't you tell me from your perspective? Or if you say, does that sound like it works for you and anything else you want to accomplish? And when they say, no, that sounds good, the greatest question in the world is, great, so why don't you start? Or I'd love to hear from you first. Why don't you kick it off? So however you want to go out there and use that type of phrase, and what that gets them to do is any specifics that are there that they want to go out there and outline, it gets them to communicate that first. If you want to drive to something more specific, if maybe they are not going through some of the technical environments that you want to understand, or they're not giving you the full spectrum of technical needs that you think that they need to go out there and have, maybe you can say, hey, I've seen different situations where when we have different pieces, but we're missing other pieces, and a specific situation like this happens, how would you envision a solution? How would you envision what you'd want to have happen? And so by you painting the picture of the lack of specifics that are there, by you giving an example of those lack of specifics and asking them how they want a solution or how they'd envision your response, or you even asking, can you tell me how that's worked for you in the past? It really gets the specifics to try to be outlined and what you can do and how you can go out there and try to do it. And then there is a little note for you, especially if you're dealing with people that are not giving you specifics, and if they tend to maybe also not be very big on commitment, you documenting what the agreement was and what the steps forward were are great. And say, okay, I've been taking notes along those lines. So Tom, what I heard you say is that you'd like to make sure that we do this going forward, and I agree we do this, and I also asked for this, and you said that was okay. I'm just going to make sure that I document this out, because who knows what we'll forget in a week, a month, a year as we kind of go forth, just to make sure that we're aligned. The next time the situation happens, we can make sure that we don't have any ambiguity. And so it's ways for you to go up there and keep that communication happening. Then we have the example of the reining people back in, right? So if it's kind of along the same lines of keeping control during the meeting, kind of go from there. But I feel like we're not 100% aligned, Tom, and I'll own that, right? As I didn't state things correctly, and I really do apologize for that. Let me just take a step back though, and really make sure that we are aligned. So what I was really hoping for was, and then you can really go out there and kind of state a new right now contract if by chance you did not do it at the start, or maybe you just take what you already did state and got agreement and restate it, Maybe it's the same words, maybe it's different words, and ensure that you get the agreement. But what you'll see here as a tactic when I'm trying to rein people back in is I go really to a place that I call, the personal, I fall on the sword is really what I call it, right? So I'm falling on the sword. They don't feel attacked. They don't feel anything else on those lines. Hey, I feel like we're on a line, and I'll own that. Maybe I didn't say things correctly, right? And I apologize. But let me take that step back now and make sure that we get aligned. So if you go from there, and if you ever forget that right now contract, and you realize you just kind of started with the highs, how are you, and then someone jumped right into a conversation about something and didn't get there, you can use this as a way to pull it back and get that contract and agreement, go from there. I've even joked around, as I've said this before in other trainings, people have said, well, I think I just made that right now contract into a midpoint contract. Yeah, you did. But the point is you still got a contract and that clarity out there. So better late than never. And there's an example of how you can go out there and try to drive that. And sometimes people just need to be oriented on what you did agree to. Maybe they forgot, maybe they're not used to that type of an agreement. And then you can kind of reorient them along those different lines. So you guys could take a look at those. So again, we wanted to give some different specifics or anything else along those lines. And then what we also really wanted to make sure that we did was give you guys a couple of tips to how do you start to really get yourself to use the right now contracts. And some of these are going to sound a little silly, but I beg of you, please hear me out and really go with it. But I really want you to practice a right now contract every day on every communication point that you have. And if you really do it, I'm asking here for 2 weeks, right? And I encourage you to really go out there and do it. But if you get familiar with the concept and how you can go out there and use this, whether it's at work with your meetings, even sitting down with your dinner, right? When you start a call with a family or a family member or a friend, how would you go out there and try to drive it? And you'll realize it's not this big formal crazy thing. Hey guys, when we start this meeting, what I really want to make sure that we do is address X, Y, and Z, and then we leave here with this. Great. I have 5 kids that range between ages 12 and 19. I have a lot of kids. Sometimes at dinner, my kids know I don't like phones at the dinner table. We all have our phones. We all have enough. The few times a week where we can actually sit down and try to have some time together, whether it's as a family or even just one of the 5 kids is all I get. How do I make sure that's really, really important? So, hey guys, when we come to the table today, can I just ask everyone to keep their phones away? All right, put your phones in your pockets and kind of go from there, or whatever the case may be. But when you start to do that, it's a little bit of a contract, right? Hey, I really want to hear what's going on in your day, and I want us to be focused on, looking at the positives of what happened today and what you went out there and did. And, we can get back to our phones later. So can I ask that you please keep the phones away, right? That's saying, hey, I want to hear about your day. I want to engage with you, right? And I don't want any distractions. And you're being blunt about it, but it doesn't sound blunt. It doesn't sound rude. It doesn't sound curt. And by being blunt, by being open, by being honest, by driving that clarity, and that's what right now contracts do, you can see how it can get real fluid. And if you can start doing this, when we sit down to dinner, and I'll freely admit, I still talk with my mom all the time, probably 2 to 3 times a week. And when I was first learning this concept, hey, Mom, I'm really glad to hear from you. I want to hear how things have been going for you. I haven't talked to you for a week because I've been traveling. And I know that you're, you just finished your hip replacement surgery. How are things feeling for you? And I want to kind of do a little catch up. That's a right now contract of a couple of things I want to make sure that I can just address with her. And so she knows I want to know how she's feeling. She knows I want to catch up on some things that we missed on. And so it provides that type of clarity. And if you can really get comfortable, fluid, and using these right now contracts in your own words, your own style, your own tonality, you'll be so much more fluid in dealing with it in every prospect or customer interaction. And if you can't get comfortable doing it with your family members or sitting down to dinner or a friend, are you really going to be that comfortable doing it with a customer or a prospect? And so those family and friend situations are easy, they're safe, and you'd be surprised once you get it going fluid, it has a lot of power. and it can really help drive things forward. And once you guys start to see its power and start to get a sense of its power, please, please, please share with the rest of your team. I have a lot of team members that I work with all the time. They know for every calendar invite I send out, there's always an agenda. Because I want to make sure that we're clear on what we want to go out there and do and what the objective is going to go out there and be. Or if by chance it's a recurring meeting, we set the agenda up at the very beginning to make sure we know what we want to do, what's the outcome, and how we can really drive things forward. Cool. So hopefully you guys will follow those tips and go from there. And now we have the second polling question that we wanted to have for you. It's the same question. And I think you guys know probably where I'm trying to get you to now. And if not, I should probably be fired as a sales trainer. But it's the same question. When do you really want to ensure that you have your prospects or customer communications that are really aligned with what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go out there and go? So, Sam, I'm hoping everyone's leaning towards the all of the above now, or maybe not all, but maybe there's still some people who think, I get it, but I really need to focus on those special projects or unique situations. And you might have a highlight. And if you're thinking to yourself, I get the concept, Scott, there's a highlight that's still important to me, I get it, but I'm hoping we're well over 80% on the all of the above.
Yeah, we're at 90% for all of the above and 10% on our first call.
Okay, perfect. Fantastic. All right, so we can close that poll and go from there. And I think the last little bit we would just want to go through, and Tom, feel free to chime in on these different things, is these are the different sales skills that we have covered with you in the 13 different sessions. 5 of them have been real specific on sales skills and sales tactics, and you can see those. When we send out the follow-up information and you take our survey, please give us more of what you want. What else would you like to see? Tom and I spend time to go through these and really bring out what you want and how you want it. So we really take a look at your feedback very fluidly, and we want to make sure that the sessions that we bring you every 4, 5, 6 weeks are ways that can help you grow your business. And if by chance you have missed anything where you said, hey, Scott mentioned elevator pitches earlier, I'd love to understand what that meant, you can see that we actually already had a session on that you can go out there, review the recording. A lot of times we even have cheat sheets that we give to you guys as well. But Tom, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to give a really specific example of right now contracts that I've always liked to use. So you've gone through the process, the sales process, you're all the way to the point where you're going to go to the client's office with paper in hand, a contract. And I will tell you what used to happen to me is I go there, I present the contract to them, and I ultimately often be walking out of that room without signed paper. And it's a very interesting specific example to use right now contracts, because in my later years when I got very good at getting signed contracts, what I would do is I would show up with this contracts and I would say, before I even pass them across the table for review, I would say, usually I had an owner in front of me, I'd say, can we agree that if I've covered everything that we've talked about thus far in this contract and it meets your requirements and we decide that this is a good fit, can we agree that I'm going to leave here today with a signed contract? Wait, see what they say. But it's a use of right now contracts where I'm making sure I actually get that paper contract signed before I leave there, and it's very effective. Because if you leave there without a paper contract signed, we know what that ends up as. Often you don't get it. That's all I've got, Chuck.
Excellent. I think that's a great ad, and hopefully you guys can see how to leverage those and go from there. Are there any questions that popped up, or did we address them along the way?
Nope, not really.
Perfect.
Again, yeah, everyone's going to be getting copies of the presentation video and the slides, so don't you worry about that.
And thank you, everyone, for your time. We appreciate it and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Great.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Scott. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
All right.